Welcome to Mind Your Business, a program of the Lewisville Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm Lori Fickling, your host, and I'm joined today by our co-host, Nina Hernandez, and David Hodges, who loves this stuff, and our special guest, Jaime Blanton, Development Director with CASA of Denton County. Welcome to the show. It's going to be great fun. You're going to love it.
I'm so excited to be here, and by excited, I mean really terrified.
That's fair. That's fair. So we're going to get the jitters out first with some rapid fire questions. This is new, but we're going to do it to you too, so be ready. Ready. Beaches or mountains?
Beaches.
Ooh. Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs. 100%.
Okay, we can be friends. Phone calls or texts?
That's tricky. I'm going to have to go with both on that one. Depending on the time of day, I feel like a phone call, like during 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. is phone call hours. You want to talk to me after 9 p.m., it better be a text message.
Okay, are you taking notes? Don't ever call her at night. Never.
No, I'm busy.
Cake or pie?
Pie, 100%.
Okay, you were this close.
Single crust with the crumbly stuff on top.
I love a woman who knows what, what she likes.
Or some cream pie. Basically, if your grandma or your son, in my case, he likes to bake me pie, that's like the weight of my heart.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're at the chamber every day from 9 to 5. If he wants to drop one off.
Yeah, he's not busy at all.
No, he's not.
I make sure he
School
gets that
days,
done.
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, Jaime, let's talk about you a little bit. So, what led you to gravitate to nonprofit world?
Well, I think I am always a champion for social justice and lost causes, and I myself sort of feel like a lost cause sometimes, and so I always wanted to be involved in work that was more than just a paycheck. It really had some longer, deeper impact. And then I really like talking to people. So the part of that work that I enjoy is really the networking and being able to connect people that I know have philanthropic interests with causes that match their heart. That's kind of, it's the relationship building piece that I love the most. But I wasn't kidding that I said I started when I was 10. So when I was in middle school, I signed up for an essay contest because I was like a decent writer at that time. And the essay was to talk about how disabled sports should have the same platform and opportunities as folks that are involved in other sports, whether they be recreational or Olympic. Or,
you chose that subject?
Or professional. That was the subject you had to write about.
That was the subject assigned. Okay.
And so I decided that was something I wanted to write about. And so I wrote an essay about how in all my years growing up to, the ripe age of 6th grade, I had never really been involved in sports, and how I didn't see people like me as a wheelchair user participating in sports that much. And it wasn't until I went to this clinic where it was like free lessons for kids on how to play tennis that I saw other people involved in sport that were also in wheelchairs. And so I wrote this whole essay about why that was important. Well, the grand prize of the essay contest was a national contest. The grand prize was to do fundraising and community relations with President Jimmy Carter and his wife. What? And so my entire family got to go.
Wait. Which means you won the grand prize?
I did. My entire family and I got to go to Colorado and learn how to snow ski. Wow. I was terrible. I'm still terrible. We got to learn to ski. And then at night, after we were done skiing, we would go and raise money for the Disabled Athletes Fund. And so we raised over $1 million in 5 days for the Disabled Athletes Fund. And so that was my first job, really. I didn't get paid, but I got some cool photos. And some cool ski clothes, all the neon 80s ski clothes that
every 6th grader needs in Texas.
Every teenager needs. And so, like I said, if anybody had told me that I could then make a career out of doing that kind of thing, I just didn't know. But now I do.
Wow, that's awesome.
Very interesting.
So let's talk about growing up with a disability, what that was like.
So I have cerebral palsy. And cerebral palsy is the most common disability in the world, and it is the one that they know the least about.
Wow.
So it's a neurological disorder, and basically means that when my brain sends signals to my body, they go to the wrong places. So, like, if I want my leg to move, sometimes my arm will move instead, sort of thing. And so, growing up, I did a lot of physical therapy and speech therapy and different things to sort of be able to be in a world that wasn't designed for me. And so I really learned pretty quickly that if I wanted to do what everyone else was doing, I had to just sort of force myself into those spaces in as jovial a way as possible. Yeah. And so I just have always felt like I have the ability to share what my unique story has been on behalf of the 56 million people in the U.S. That have disabilities. Not all of them can advocate for themselves in the way that I can. And so pretty much every opportunity that I've had to sort of have a platform and be able to talk to folks about it, I do. Yeah. I mean, I was Miss Wheelchair Kentucky. I was...
Did you know that?
I was runner-up.
Did you know that?
I was.
That's really
I was
cool.
a runner-up for Miss Wheelchair America, and
I love that.
The only disappointment about not being selected was I didn't get to be in the Rose Bowl parade. That was like the real reason I wanted to win. And so I talk to a lot of folks about why it's important to have just a general awareness of the number of people in our community that are facing disabilities. Sometimes you can see, like mine, I mean, shoot, I can't go into any room and not have people make observations or decisions about who I am and what I'm capable of, pretty much in any space. But that's also true for folks that have invisible disabilities, that they don't have to disclose to you that they are struggling, but they might be. And so it impacts housing and transportation and employment and mental health and pretty much every area that you guys talk about and navigate within a chamber space. There should be folks at the table talking about the impact that has for folks with disabilities, and we just don't think about it that much.
Right. How can we make that more at the forefront?
Well, so I have 2 teenagers, which that's hard enough, right? I have a senior who's 18 and I have a son who's 16. And we were talking about this just yesterday because my daughter was doing some sort of social studies project where she had to evaluate a political cartoon, and she used one that was based on the Americans with Disabilities Act. And not everyone in her class knew that her mom was in a wheelchair because it's not like a thing you wear around like a sign or something, And so she was talking about the cartoon, and she said, "Mom, the one thing I've learned from you over all of these years is that disability is the final frontier of diversity and equity and inclusion. That every other marginalized population is at least starting to have or has had their opportunity to have an awakening and awareness to why equality for that group should matter." And I think disability is sort of the final frontier in that regard. And my kids have heard me say that, I guess, so often that she brought it up in her class. And I think that's true. And I think there are a lot of reasons for it. I think it's the only minority population any of us could enter at any time. We can't change our other things that might separate us, right? But we could become part of that community. And so I think for anyone that is a human that cares about other humans, it's important to understand what are the ways that we can advocate for friends with disabilities? What are the ways that we can include them appropriately? How do we not just say dumb things that are sometimes hurtful, right? And a lot of times it's in the hope of being kind or nice, but instead it comes off kind of not that way. And I think the easiest advice I could give is just to get to know one another a little bit better. And I think the more we start to trust each other, the deeper and better conversations we can have, and that way we can build a stronger community. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it all goes together, right? We can talk about this. We can talk about what CASA does for kids in foster care. For me, that's the tenet of it all. If we build stronger relationships where trust can really be part of it, then good things can happen for business, for community, for civic engagement, for the growth of Texas, for anything that you care about can be improved if you learn to have better conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And better partnerships.
Better relationships.
Yeah.
David's just staring deeply into my eyes like I've given him so much to think about.
You have. You definitely have. Just your wealth of knowledge in that is just, you brought up so many points, you're making me just spin like going, okay,
but here's the thing, just like what Lori was saying with CASA, that people get overwhelmed and they feel like, well, I can't possibly do that because I'm just one person. I think that's true for sort of understanding and building alliance within the disability community as well. I'm not asking you to make sure every single space in all of your community is accessible to me, but I am asking, if you invite me to your house, that you make sure there's a place or a way for me to go to the restroom, for example. Or if you invite me into your business, that you truly use the shorter counter that's at the front and you don't just stack up all your business cards on it or stuff like that, right? So I mean, even from a physical space perspective, the Americans with Disabilities Act has all of these parameters that are really kind of a pain in the neck sometimes for business owners, and they cost more money, and they take up space, and they take up parking, and it's, I can see all the reasons why it would be a frustration, but it's only a frustration until you yourself as the business owner can't get into your own office because you broke your leg or you needed a knee replacement or whatever, right? It's something you don't care about until it becomes something you need to care about.
Jamie, you touched on something a minute ago. I want to ask you. I've been around you, and I've been around other CASA people and advocates. What age do you think would be good? And I realize kids in grade school and elementary and so forth can't do it. What age should young adults get involved in stuff like that as an advocate? When can they? Because I think our future is really in our youth.
So I think we're talking about two different things. I think if you want to start learning about what are the important issues in the community and how do you have a role in it, I think there's no you can't start early enough. I mean, I think the younger you are, the more open you are to different perspectives.
And more knowledgeable.
Well, just the more open you are to people that aren't like you.
Right.
And so I think it's really important that you start exposing kids at a really young age to the fact that there are differences in class and ability, and not everybody's parents provide them all the things or whatever. I think there are ways you can have that conversation very young. If you want to truly become an advocate for CASA, you have to be 21 or older, simply because of the legal ramifications of what you're doing, because you are taking a role with the court. And so the Texas Family Code and our policies require you to be 21 because of the legalities of everything that a CASA does. In terms of disability and some of the other things that we were talking about, I think about what it's like for my own children, who, like I said, are now about to be young adults out in the world, when they introduce me to their friends for the first time. And ever since they were little bitty, they've had to explain in their own way to their own friends who I am and what's different about me or the same about me. And I think that's what it all comes down to. There's a whole lot more about us always that is the same, but we spend a lot of our time, a lot of our energy focused on the things that are different.
Right.
Whether that's, I can't learn from this business training because I am in this industry and you're in that industry, or I can't be involved in this philanthropic cause because I don't have any experience with that particular issue or whatever. Quite frankly, I think that's all bogus. And I think that's the excuses we all use to stay in our comfort zone, frankly.
Do you think that's the biggest distraction, is people are afraid to get out of their comfort zone?
I think it's that, and then sometimes I think it's money. For the disability community, I think that the fact that we are so far behind is more financial than anything else. Because, and this is going to be very controversial.
Ooh, we're here for it.
I don't know.
She's dropping a bomb on
She is. She's good at that.
I think it is sometimes easier to assume everyone with disabilities is just on Social Security, and so I don't really have, they're being taken care of over here in this way, or whatever. Or they were in an accident and they got a settlement from it, and so they don't need anything from me because they're over here. And what people don't realize is it also costs me a whole lot more money to be equal with you, because I have to pay for adaptive equipment. I have to pay for my house to be modified. I lost my benefits when I took a full-time job because the government doesn't allow for me to make the salary that I make as a nonprofit executive.
Wow.
So I can't even utilize some of the structures that we have in place because I've chosen instead to give back to my tax base, my community, my et cetera, by having a full-time job. So I think there's all of these governmental structures and legal structures and financial structures. And I think that's true of a lot of marginalized communities. We're just now starting to talk about it in terms of race, and that's been going on for a really long time.
Right.
We're just now starting to talk about it in terms of gender. Women still make less than men. We're just now starting to talk about those things. And so for disability, we're still all over here because we just want you guys to pay attention to the fact we're even alive in the first place. And not all of us can talk to you like you and I are talking now.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it just, and heaven forbid you be confronted with your own mortality by being my friend if I can't communicate with you in the same way you communicate with me.
Right.
Like, I think it's a very complex thing.
No, yeah, by all means.
I think learning, you have been very kind to me to let me watch you get in the car, like, show me all that. I think if we can learn more about it, most of the things we never give a second thought about until we have a friend, and then we say, oh, okay, because you've shared a lot of things with me that I never thought about. And so I think if we can just learn and grow that way, we can all become better at this and not say stupid things.
I mean, I think that, like I said, I think that's true of every marginalized group.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's when we were talking about where do we start, especially with youth, like that was one of the greatest things for me in being in a role like a Miss Wheelchair Kentucky, Miss Wheelchair America, where I had access to and presented at elementary schools because, you know, little kids love a tiara. And so they do. I mean, they wanted to hug me and take my picture. And so, I mean, it was so much fun. And you know what they asked me? Things like, how do you take a shower? Where do you live? Well, you know what? If I can explain that to someone who's 6, I sure as heck can explain it to you.
Yeah.
Right.
And so they don't have all the hang-ups we do. So they're willing to ask, hey, how do you take a shower? Well, guess what? Not everybody's going to answer the questions the way I do. Yeah. Because just like with everything else, we all have our own way of walking through the world. I have decided for myself personally that the best way for me to walk through the world, if I'm going to be about relationship like we were talking about, is just to be as honest and transparent as I can be. Because what do I have to lose? Like, I am who I am.
It's not going to change anything.
So it's not going to change who I am. It will either build a connection between us or it won't. Well, guess what? There's billions of people in the world. If we don't build a connection, I'll go right on down the road and build a connection with somebody else. I don't take it personally. But I think what I have learned is that it is way harder to be that kind of person.
The kind of person that you are, you mean?
Work. Yeah. It just takes work. And it takes some, not only openness, but a little like self-reflection too. And that's just hard to do sometimes. And so, I don't know. I just hope people will try. We can eat pie and try it together. I like that.
And talk about dogs.
Unfortunately, we have to end now. It's pie time.
I mean, honestly, like I will meet you at the dog park and hang out with your dog. I'll meet you for drinks or pie or whatever your thing is. And I think that's the thing about it is like there are business owners who are doing it well. There are community leaders who are doing it well. Whatever it is. Yeah. Insert whatever it is. There's somebody you know or somebody that you know who knows somebody who can help you learn about whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's about relationships.
And you
Like I said, yeah.
you have done brave things. And when we saw your parents recently, and I'll let you tell them where we saw your parents, your mom said she's always done brave things. Tell us the latest brave thing you did.
Okay,
As we wrap up, we want to hear this good story.
I went through some pretty significant life milestones recently, and so even I, with all of my brash and swagger or whatnot, was thinking, there are a few things that people have been telling me, I don't really know that you can do that. And I just wanted to try them. And so one of them was stand-up comedy. And so for Christmas, I got some money from my mom and dad, actually. They just decided that was what they were going to give me for Christmas. And I turned around and gave their money to some guy who is a well-known comedian who held classes. So he held 6 weeks of classes at the Addison Improv. He has actually a class that starts next week for anybody that's interested at the Addison Improv. They too can go and sign up. And so I went to 6 weeks of classes to learn how to write jokes, because I thought you just stand up there on the stage and you talk about your absurd life and people will laugh. And there's a little bit about that. Yeah. There's a little bit of that, but you're supposed to write it in a certain order and kind of structure it in a certain way. And our graduation was a set. And so I invited a lot of my friends because I figured at least my friends would laugh at me if no one else did. And
you get meets $1 at the door.
Yeah. And I figure you give a couple people some drinks, they'll laugh. So, but turns out other people laughed as well. So now I have this budding side gig career as a stand-up comedian, and the fact that it's called stand-up comedy and I can't stand up is not lost on me. I think that's deeply ironic. And I make jokes about that too. So, yeah, I really am enjoying it. It's like a good outlet. I go to regular therapy and then I do comedy therapy both. And I feel like the both and is really where the secret sauce is for me.
But you try not to mix them.
And become, I do. Sometimes I make jokes about therapy. So, I think that secret sauce is how I'm going to get to be a better person. But I would just say, I don't know that my mom is right. She's my mom, so she has to say nice things like that. I think what I am willing to do and what she's maybe talking about is like, believe that nothing terrible is going to happen. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen as a stand-up comedian is literally no one will laugh at me. But guess what? My set is only 6 minutes, and then after that's done, somebody else is going to stand up and try. So it was 6 minutes of my life I wasn't going to get back, but it was only 6 minutes. And so I think if you take that philosophy and multiply it out times lots of things, either really cool things can happen and people will laugh at you and then you'll get paid $12 or whatever for people to laugh at you, or maybe something really awesome will happen, like you'll become a CASA volunteer or something. I don't know, or somewhere in between. I don't know.
I like it.
I was not able to make it, but everybody I heard about said you killed it.
So
you didn't just kind of do it, you killed it.
I do have a show coming up on Mother's Day at 7 o'clock at the Plano House of Comedy. I know a lot of people will be hugging their moms and their grandparents and their grandkids that day. But if not, then you can come out to the Plano House of Comedy to that show. And there are others coming.
Is that the tickets you were trying to sell out the side door of the van?
If we stay friends, David, I might even show you the video of my set so that you can laugh right along. You can even hear Lori laughing at one point.
That's true, actually.
That's awesome.
Oh, man. Okay, well, I guess we better wrap up.
This is a lot of fun, you guys.
This means there's another one
this
coming.
This podcast wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It was okay.
That's what everybody says.
It was okay.
Yeah.
Jamie, you were awesome. You're an inspiration.
You
are. You really are. Yeah. You made me want to become funny.
David. It's a long way to go, David. Long way to go.
I know.
There's some classes you can buy.
There's dreams in the sky.
Before we wrap up, I have one more question. Tell me someone who's inspired you. And how?
Okay, at the risk of sounding like a total nerd, Truly a total nerd. So when I went to TCU and I studied journalism and political science, because I thought I was going to be like the next Rose Garden journalist and be in the press corps and stuff. Anyway, it didn't work out. But one of my professors was Jim Wright, the former Speaker of the House.
Oh, wow.
And whether you believe in him politically or not, it is real cool to take a class called The History of American Politics from a person who was literally had a front row seat to American politics for a long time. And we became friends because, I make friends with everyone I meet, basically. And so we would have coffee once a week. For 4 years, we had coffee once a week. And, I was 18 and he was not 18. He was pretty old. and we would talk about all kinds of things. And there's one thing that he shared with me that I have carried with me since the day he told me, which was, it doesn't matter what side you're on, as long as you're on the side of people and what's right, good things will come.
Wow.
And so I have always used that as sort of a guiding light for myself. And I'm so grateful to him that he was willing to have coffee with an 18-year-old that he didn't know.
Every week for 4 years.
Every week for 4 years, because I learned
amazing.
all kinds of cool stuff from him. But that was probably the coolest. And so he has really always been an inspiration to me. And someday I hope to be sort of like him and cool and old and be able to have coffee with
Well,
people
you're already
and
cool,
stuff.
but you're not old yet. So we got to work on that.
You got
I'm
about
glad
40
you
more
think
years
so.
before you're considered old, but that's okay.
24 hours. 24 hours.
Whatever.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Tell everyone how they can find you.
Oh, how to find me?
LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah, so all the things. I mean, I'm in that age where literally you can find me by carrier pigeon if you like, or LinkedIn, Facebook, and it's Jaime Walker Blanton, which is my maiden name.
Okay.
CASA is casadenton.org, and you can look at our staff, and I'm
Perfect.
listed right there.
And your
Lori has my cell phone number.
And your Jaime.
Jaime.
It's tricky. Got to do it right.
Well, there's got to be at least one hard thing about making friends with me. So that's it. But no, really, and I would love for people to reach out to me if they're interested in getting to know me or having us come and speak, or if they need help figuring out if their bathroom at their business is big enough for me to turn around or whatever it is. I don't care. I'll be there to do that.
I love it.
And pie. I only come for pie.
Okay, perfect.
And whiskey.
We know where to get pie. Oh, and whiskey.
Yeah.
We
Well,
found that.
maybe together, maybe separate. Depends.
That works.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today for Mind Your Business, a program of the Lewisville Area Chamber of Commerce. We recorded this at the studio at First Baptist Church, Lake Dallas. I'm your host, Lori Fickling, and thank you to our special guest, Jaime Blanton, and to David Hodges and Nina Hernandez. We hope to see you next time.